podcast, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. You see, it's funny because my girlfriend, Karen, shout out to her, she says I say this all the time, and it's absolutely true where I cannot wait for shows like this with anticipated guests like the one we have on tonight. And so before I introduce her, I just want to give a big shout out to Anthony. He is a recent ambassador to the team. Big shout out to Anthony. Right before we started recording, I was just giving him mad props because all the things that he does outside of FLI, he's shining, he's making moves, he's executing. And when I met him, I'm like, this is the kind of guy I want around us. And he graciously accepted that. And so we're proud to call him an ambassador. So, Anthony, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great, man. Thank you for the opportunity. I look forward to this podcast. Hopefully, we can have a great conversation and maybe leave some insights for the audience. They can take away and do something with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's exactly, the goal with the podcast is to bring on obviously valuable guests, but also leave our listeners with some gems to take home and again, just like yourself, execute on. So again, I appreciate you having you on. And it's gonna really, gonna be a good episode because here's the guest. Again, before I say her name, let me just give you a quick synopsis, listeners. This is an individual who gave me a lot of inspiration while I was a student, literally less than 2.5 weeks ago. I'm not a student anymore, but I've known her for probably like 2 years now. I've gone to a ton of her seminars or webinars, I guess you can call it, because during the the period of COVID, she gave a lot of financial webinars where that was really my peak time of doing a lot of learning. So for our listeners, if you guys don't know, I did a lot of my personal learning throughout COVID time, where I like to tell people I read the books, I listened to the podcast, I watched the YouTube videos, I talked to the mentors. But again, one of those things as well was tapping into this guest's webinars, right? And she taught things in the realm of, again, credit cards, emergency funds, paying off debt, budgeting, the whole kind of foundation of even what we teach here at FLI, right? And it's funny because to some degree, I always felt like I was annoying her because I was that one person who always asked so many questions and made comments in the webinars. But she was, again, equally as excited to have me there. And she was gracious enough to answer those questions, which, again, even more inspired me, motivated me to, again, bring those kinds of skills and acumen to her, with FLI. So really, she has been a catalyst for what has come here with FLI. Just want to say that and put that and give her the credit that she deserves. So without further ado, we have Taylor Sminchak from Blossom Financial Coaching. Absolutely grateful and thankful to have you on. Taylor, I know a little bit about you. I know a little bit about Blossom Financial Coaching. Can you tell our listeners, well, even maybe Anthony, I know he did a little research on you as well. Can you tell our listeners who you are, what you do, a little bit what Blossom Financial Coaching is all about?
Yeah, well, thank you for that introduction, Yinka. And it's crazy. That was 2 years ago, I think, where you started coming to that was during the heat of COVID, I feel like 2021. Yeah. I don't feel like I deserve all that credit because it was kind of more of a simple, workshop series, trying to
It
keep
was
it very
effective.
introductory. But I think this is the first conversation, I know we're virtual, but that we've had face to face because it's always been,
True.
if you think about it, right?
True.
Yeah,
That's a good point. Yeah.
we've had one phone call, but everything else has been through the chat and the webinar. And
Good
yeah,
point.
so happy to see both of you. But yeah, a little bit about me. So do we want more background or do we want what I'm doing currently? What are you thinking?
Yeah, really anything you'd like to share. Again, just more of like maybe what you do, who you're about. Just a little elevator pitch.
Yeah, well, I am the founder and owner of Blossom Financial Coaching. And so this has been a journey starting my business. So Yinka doesn't even know all of this, but
Oh,
probably in 2018. So that's when I was going through my debt free journey of becoming debt free and just really having those realizations and what you said, going through some of the YouTube videos, dabbling in Dave Ramsey stuff and just exposing myself to different content and realizing that I had a problem as far as debt goes. And then it was placed on my heart just to want to help other people with their money. We became debt free. It was in 2021. It was a process, but just having the money and being able to keep your money and not having to throw it to payments and student loans, car payments, all those things, credit cards. And so just having that peace and that freedom from becoming debt free, I wanted other people to experience that. So simultaneously, I used to work at the University of Akron in the office called Zip Assist. So if we have any UA people out there, I'm sure we do. I worked there for about 4.5 years, and I was tasked to create a financial wellness program for college students. And so I felt like a hypocrite because, I was going through my own journey and, trying to get better with money management. And then I had to teach college students about this. And so that really lit a fire underneath me to get better at it. But probably it was beginning of 2020. I had my daughter in January of 2020, right before COVID. And so I just really wanted to start my own business. And so I started working on that, and then COVID hit. And so that kind of derailed some things. I filed my business name back in 2020. But I really didn't fully launch Blossom Financial Coaching. I dabbled in it a little bit, but until late last year when I went all in on it. So I do it in a part-time capacity, but it's growing, which is a good problem. But yeah, I mainly help women, women in their post-college to 30s or so, just helping them gain clarity over their finances and just get excited for their financial future. And so that's a little bit of what I do. I know we'll get into a little bit more.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, it's very interesting because, like you said, I did not know all of that, right? So you said you had, maybe to agree, like some imposter syndrome where you're teaching college students and you were looking at yourself like, I might not be following exactly what I'm teaching, right? And then you took that initiative and you did that, and then even took it to the next level and started teaching others, right? And so, like, again, there's just so many parallels, and I'm so excited we're having this conversation today, and I'm blessed to have you on because, again, you kind of like downplayed yourself in the beginning, saying I don't deserve all that credit. And you absolutely do, Taylor. You have no idea, because I was so excited, and it had nothing to do with like, hey, if you show up, you have the opportunity to win a $50, all campus gift card. No, that was a nice perk, cool. But the reason I showed up, it's because you just were absolutely awesome. You were amazing. The content was great, and then you were very, again, an affable person. Right, you answered the questions. I asked a lot of like technical, maybe semi-technical questions, but I was in my learning phase as well. And we're not pros by any means, but again, all of the value provided was significant to me. So I do want to give you your flowers for that. So number one, I want to appreciate that you in that way. Yeah, no, absolutely. And then number two, right. So let's kind of go back for a second. You mentioned that you also, dibbled and dabbled in a lot of financial content, whether it's, Dave Ramsey, maybe Robert Kiyosaki, this, that, and third. There's so many out there, right? Shout out to them. And so like I kind of want to start off the conversation in the sense that, did you kind of do any self-learning on how to coach, right? Because I think it's maybe one thing to learn it yourself, but it's a whole nother thing now to coach people, right? Because I think to a degree, what we do here at FLI, whether it's reading certain books or whether, we have, salespeople on the team as well. We have that acumen, and we have that characteristic to like talk and maybe convince and do some sort of like selling or consulting, right? And so for you, did you do any sort of like some of the Dave Ramsey? I think you get like certified as a financial coach. Did you do anything like that to kind of, progress your journey and, kind of bring your business to fruition?
I did. So it was actually through the University of Akron. So it's called AFC, Accredited Financial Counselor, is the certification that I have. And so I got a scholarship to do that. It's pretty expensive. I don't remember the exact amount of how much it is, but it was through Cash Course. So that's a free organization, which you might remember from some of the webinars back in the day. But they provided a scholarship for me to get that certification, and it was pretty extensive. Studying textbooks, and you had to actually go to like a proctored center to take this exam, and it was pretty difficult. It's like deeper, way deeper than what I go with my students and my clients, but it's all good background knowledge. And we had to have at least 1,000 hours of contact with clients and helping people with their money, so pretty extensive. But that's where I got more so of my experience with coaching, just learning how to help people. Obviously the content is important, but just understanding the mindset and the psychology and the motivation behind things. And so I'm happy to have that certification, and it's not at all needed to be a financial coach. I'll say that, but it definitely gives me some confidence with what I'm teaching. And I know other people like to see that certification too, if they're familiar with it. But I got some experience with that coaching stuff, and also just like helping college students, just you know how it is. You learn as you're doing, and as you're teaching people. I worked a lot one-on-one with college students who were struggling with basic needs, and so helping them with that, just having those individual conversations really helped me become a better coach. Yeah.
No, I love it. And I love it a lot, right? And even again, talking about the certifications, that's stuff that we're thinking here at FLI as well. Like, what kind of certifications can we have, to take us to the next level, to be, seen as more credible and actually be more credible, right? So I love that you said that. Thank you for sharing that. And so let's go back even further, right? I love asking, we've had several awesome financial coaches in the space. on the podcast, right? Ranging from Jeremy Schneider, Todd Baldwin, like just the list goes on. And now obviously the amazing Taylor Sminchak, appreciate this, right? And so the question I love asking, financial gurus, if you will, is, now that you have this information, right? Who was Taylor when she was in college, right? Who was Taylor when maybe she graduated early college? Maybe she didn't have this financial acumen, right? Because we have a lot of listeners, even like myself, I just recently graduated. We have Anthony who's currently in school, right? What are those things that it's like, I wish, like I know it now and I teach it, but what are those things that you wish you knew if you were maybe like our age?
Yeah, thinking about college, Taylor. So I always draft my social media and my newsletters a little bit early. So I actually just scheduled an email next week about my money story. So this is like a good timing I recently, thought about this and wrote it down. But at least like childhood, at least. So I was born into a working class family. My dad's a union plumber and owns a plumbing and heating company. That my husband actually works for. So I think that has a lot to do with my mindset with things, at least like motivation and, working hard and all of that good stuff. And we never really struggled with money growing up. But for good or bad, my parents never talked to me about money, like growing up, which that's something I want to do with my kids now. Teaching them about money, involving them in the budgeting process, talking about saving and giving and all of that good stuff. So when I hit college, to answer your question, I never struggled per se. I usually worked about 2 to 3 jobs depending on, the season. A lot of them were leadership positions on campus. So like nothing too crazy. But I never got ahead. And that's what I really regret. And so if there's any college students listening or even young adults as well, there's more to life than just living paycheck to paycheck. There's more to that. And so that's just something I wish I would have known. I just wish I could shake Taylor and just like save $5 from every paycheck or $10 from every paycheck, because there's so much value in that time value of money that I just wasn't even thinking about. I was in a sorority and I was spending money on t-shirts and, fun things. And, I don't regret any of that. But I just could have set myself up for better success. And so you don't have to, not have the fun college experience, but at least, do a little bit of that. And so to answer your question again, when I went to grad school, so I went to grad school the day after I graduated pretty much from, yeah, I don't recommend that. That was too much of a, a tight turnaround. I graduated from Kent on a Saturday, moved to Dayton on Sunday, and started my grad program on a Monday. And so that was really tough. But grad school was really when it became tough, because I was a GA. And so my tuition was fully covered. That's a good gig. But I only had an $800 paycheck per month. And it wasn't too long ago. That was in 2015, 2016. And so $800 a month is like really, really hard to live on, especially now. And so I was forced to create my first resemblance of a budget on Excel, just to like survival mode. And so that's kind of, what I had to learn the hard way. But what I wish I would have learned post-college, my worst mistake that I ever made was I thought I deserved a brand new car because I got my first big kid job. And I see this happen a lot. I had a Ford Focus at the time, which was only a few years old. And then I upgraded to a Ford Explorer, which is a pretty big jump, at least. I'm skipping a few Ford cars in between there. And at the time it was a $576 car payment. And I thought I deserved it because, I graduated, I got my degree, I got a job. I wasn't making much money at all, but I deserved it. And so that's something that, a piece of wisdom that I would share is, work hard for what's important to you, but just don't fall trap to lifestyle creep and keeping up with your friends. That's something that I fell victim to. And I had to pay that off. So that was a part of our debt-free journey.
No, absolutely. And again, I'm very happy you shared that, right? Because I think as it hits home, even for myself, I believe that there's some sort of catalyst that might need to happen in one's life for them to actually take financial matters seriously, right? And so whether that's later on in life, which, by that time you can argue that it's not necessarily too late. At least, any time is better than no time. Sure. But the earlier, the better, right? And so, I can attest to this to a degree because I remember, number one, let me kind of give some quick background, right? Because Taylor, this is, our first time. And it's good to have it on the podcast. People can know the story. I might have talked about it in the past, but, being an out-of-state student, being from Minnesota, going to school in Ohio, paying out-of-state tuition, right? I had to find ways to ensure that I'm coming out of school without, triple or not triple, 6 digits worth of debt, right? In the hundreds of thousands. So I think for me, having to understand, similar to you, Taylor, right, working multiple jobs, working at Chipotle on weekends, let's say, I think it's 19 hours per weekend, right, to try to hit their quota for tuition reimbursement. Simultaneously being an RA, right, which is a smart move for our listeners out there, become an RA, right? You get things subsidized with housing and food and all that, and you get to, expound on your leadership opportunities. But at the same time, third job was working with ZPN. If you both are familiar with ZPN, right, it's a programming network, and doing these things. While again, it was, I think, right before COVID started, I was just like, this sucks. While studying biomedical, like, this sucks, but I need to do it. Right. And so, some money started coming in, then COVID hit. And then being one of those students who received FAFSA, right, I think that the school did a couple times the $1,200 for exactly. Right. And then the government, because I was a dependent, an additional $1,200. So like at that time, there's just a lot of money coming in. Right. And then just knowing how hard I worked for that money, I'm like, there's no way I can just blow this. Like, there's no way I'm not about to work, even though there was some free money, the hard work money, I'm not about to blow that. And so now having the time that COVID kind of granted me and finding that silver lining to learn the things that school doesn't teach you, right? That's our mission. Like I mentioned, reading the books, talking to mentors, watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, watching YouTube videos, I found ways, to pay off the debt, like again, with Dave Ramsey's method, or to, learn how to invest, Graham Stephan, right? There's just so many different like outlets out there now, FLI and obviously Blossom Financial being one of them or two of them, right? It's just the easy information is so easily accessible. But number two, you kind of have to have the drive, right? Because it's so easy to be out there, but not everybody's doing it. Otherwise, everybody'd be a millionaire. That's not the case, right? So I absolutely love that you shared that, Taylor, because I think for people, like, you really need to have that catalyst. And it sucks to say, but you kind of need to have that catalyst to take it seriously. So I love that you shared that. Absolutely. And so, yeah, no, absolutely right. And so, the next place I kind of want to pivot to, which you kind of already, touched on, which I think is a beautiful thing, and I love asking people this, is, again, now you're, a financial acquainted, even parent, which is great, right? How are you setting up your children, right? Because I love asking this question, and even though I don't have children, but I understand this. Sure, it's one thing to be able to pass down assets, like tangible assets, right, in trusts and custodials and you name it, right? But it's a whole other thing to pass down that information, because I've heard and I've seen and I've researched a lot of statistics that if it's not taught, probably a generation or two, that money will probably be gone. So you have to actually teach the skills on top of passing down the tangibles to ensure that it continues, right? So what are those intangibles that you are teaching, your next generation?
Yeah, so my kids are little, so I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So learning as I'm going, there's definitely people who are ahead of me who know a little bit more by trial and error. But even with my 3-year-old, we're having these conversations, and I don't think you're ever too young to start talking about that. It just needs to be age appropriate. So for her, like her version of budgeting, so for example, she got a Target gift card for her birthday. And I think there was like $15 on it, like something small. So you can't buy the big toys that, that she wants to buy. And so we had to have those conversations in the moment in the store. And like, I could have easily just been like, oh, I'll just pay the difference. And I'm like, no, we're going to teach her like how the value of money really, like, how much this is. And so like we had to have some tough choices, which I was prepared for a meltdown in the middle of Target, like a toddler screaming on the floor. But she understood. I'm like, no, we can't afford that one. We need to purchase this one. Or, you have to make a choice. You can only pick one. And she totally got it. So I think a lot of people underestimate what kids can understand. And so that's something that I am trying to do with her. I'm also not afraid to budget in front of her. Like, obviously, I'm not like teaching her how to budget quite yet. But she'll ask me what I'm doing. I'm like, oh, we're like budgeting our money. We're making sure we have what we have to afford things. And, you never know how much they're catching. But I wish my parents talked to us a little bit more about money and showed us the process of when they paid off debt and, affording vacations and all of that fun stuff too. So trying to just have more conversations and make it more approachable is kind of what I'm trying to do. We're starting to think about, she's at the age where we can start doing chores of some degree, at least like for pay and allowance. So trying to do some research on that. So she's open to it. So I think we're going to start doing that. But even when she gets, let's say she gets $10, like, okay, this much can go to savings, this much can go to fund money, and then giving is really important for us. And so I want to set aside some money for giving for her and just teach that habit already. It'll be tough. Being a parent is super tough. But yeah, trying to just make it more approachable. That's my whole thing. I'm really passionate about making financial wellness sticky and relevant, regardless of your age or place in life. And so yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see. I might have more answers for you over time, but
Yeah.
my 1-year-old, he's a whole different kid, so he's not going to be probably as responsible as what she will be at firstborn. But yeah.
Yeah. No, that's hilarious, right? And again, it's just a beautiful thing because it's like that is you're really teaching what you wish you were probably taught as a child, right? Which I think is
Exactly.
absolutely beautiful. And again, now they're even making financial books for kids nowadays, like at the ABC
Yeah.
level. I think I saw like ABC Economics or something on Amazon the other day. I was like, oh wow, yeah, that's cool.
Uh-huh.
Which is
They
I
make
think
like
is
piggy
amazing, right?
banks. They make the little piggy banks with the give,
Yeah.
save, spend, and I'm like, that's so
Mhm.
cool. It just
That
like
is really
the
cool.
habits. That's all that it is. It's muscle memory. And I wish someone taught me just to save the $5 from every paycheck. And so hopefully I can
Mhm.
instill that habit in them while they're young,
Yeah. Yeah.
before they
No,
have
absolutely.
expenses. Yeah.
That's beautiful. But that's awesome. And again, I very much appreciate you shared that. And so, now another pivot, right? And so if you can kind of enlighten us again, however deep you would want to go, we'd love to learn more about it. And so our listeners can as well. You kind of a little bit talked about the background behind Blossom Financial. We'd love to hear more, maybe the inspiration, even for the name, right?
Mhm.
I would love to hear that. And then as well, can you kind of tell us again to whatever degree that you can, how do you go about managing that, building it out, right? Is it fun for you? Is it stressful at times? Again, as business owners ourselves, like we understand that, right? And so we'd love to hear more of your story as well. And we really, and I think I told you this personally, I absolutely admire your niche. Like your niche is very, very cool. And there's an awesome market for it, right? And obviously you and I, we've had conversations and we plug each other, which is very, very cool, right? But anything about Blossom Financial, we would love to know more. Like this is now your time to shine. Soapbox time. We'd love to hear more about Blossom Financial.
Yeah, well, so as far as the name goes, I knew I really wanted a name that represented growth and just
Mm.
positive improvement. And so I was trying to think of names, along that line. I was thinking like Flourish and some other things, and either the URL was taken of what I wanted, or it just wasn't the exact name. But I landed on Blossom, and so my husband and I, we actually met at Blossom, the music center in Cauga Falls, if you're familiar
Oh,
with
that's
the
good.
area.
That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Blossom, the word came first, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that'll totally work. Like it has meaning too. So that's where Blossom Financial Coaching comes from. But personally, but then also just helping my clients experience that growth and the flourishing of their financial freedom. So that's where that comes from. But yeah, I mentioned a little bit ago, my niche that I serve is younger professionals. So I serve a lot of women who are post college in their 30s or so. Obviously, I've served male clients, I've served people who are outside of that age demographic, but that's who I at least market towards and support in general. But yeah, just helping them find clarity over their money. I think that's half the battle, is just understanding where you're at. I've noticed a lot of people, and I was this way a few years ago, you avoid your finances. There's a problem, you don't want to look at it. You don't check your bank account. A lot of people don't even open their bank account because they know the number is negative or it's below what they want it to be. So just giving them clarity of here's where you're at, and then let's talk about where you want to go, and then providing that clear plan for them to get there. Because sometimes it's not as hard as what they think, or they're closer than what they think. They just need that extra guidance and encouragement to, here's what I think you should do. Does this align with your goals? And just helping them. I don't know. You just see, I'm sure you see this with your clients too. You just see that weight lifted off of them once you show them how to budget, or, how to create a debt repayment plan or a savings plan. And, that's just so rewarding as a coach once people have that aha light bulb moment. Um, and so, yeah, I do mainly one-on-one coaching is what I do. So all of my clients, they start with what's called a clarity session. That clarity is really big for me, obviously, but it's a 90-minute session where we just dive in deep. Every client leaves with a budget that they could start implementing right away. We talk about whatever's important to them. So if they have debt that they want to get rid of, we come up with a debt repayment strategy. We talk about some of their mindset struggles around money. A lot of the women that I serve, they struggle with anxiety around money, or stress or avoidance. And so we talk through that as much as we can in a 90-minute session, of course. And so some people, they feel comfortable taking our plan and executing it, especially if they're really driven and motivated themselves. But most of my clients, and they then pursue a longer term coaching program, either a 4-month or a 7-month, depending on their needs and their situations and their budget and all of that. But yeah, do a little bit of everything. I do some workshops, as Jinka said a little bit ago. So trying to start increasing that, at least with Blossom Financial Coaching. And I do fun challenges too. So right now I'm leading a group of women through a vacation savings challenge. And so it's just really where we're diving deep. It's an accountability group where I give them tips and tricks and accountability, and I have one-on-one meetings with them, but encouraging them to save cash for vacations. So meeting them with, they have a practical need. They're going to travel, right? I just want them to travel without paying on a credit card and not paying it off. So almost finished with that, and we've had great success. It's the first cohort that I've done, so I'll be doing that again in the fall. So if anyone's interested in a vacation savings challenge out there, hit me up.
Hit her up. Yeah, and this is why I mentioned the niche, right? Because I think when the niche is more defined, especially yours, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like the community is tight knit, right? And so when the community is tight knit, people feel belonging, and they also want to be active and contribute and receive value, provide value, receive value, provide value, right? And that's something we consistently think about with FLI, right? We have our community, and it's like how can we consistently have people feel like they belong, in a real way, but then also as well receive value on top of provide that value, which I think is amazing. And that's kind of the sense I'm getting from your organization, your group, which is really awesome. Anthony, I think I just saw your mouth move. Were you about to say something? I didn't mean to cut you off. My apologies, brother.
You're good. So I was going to, the first thing, my first question is I didn't know that before meeting Yinka and before being introduced to FLI and like financial literacy, I didn't know it was possible to budget and to still like have a vacation. So for the people who are hard workers, who are living paycheck to paycheck because that's what they think they need to do, like as a accredited financial coach and with your experience from your expertise, how is it possible to be able to go on a vacation and not live paycheck to paycheck?
Planning, which I know that's hard. And again, I mentioned before our call that I'm a natural planner, so that comes a little bit more easy to me. But just thinking ahead. So I think our culture, we tend to just have tunnel vision sometimes of like the day to day, and rightfully so, right? Some of us are really struggling with our money and we're burdened with stress and whatnot. But it's important to reflect on what's important to you. So if traveling is important to you, whether it's close or far away, like we need to plan and make that happen. And so my followers know sinking funds. I'm a huge supporter of sinking funds, just planning in advance and budgeting for that vacation. So to kind of answer your question, Anthony, in my vacation savings challenge, the very first thing that we do is they actually budget for their dream vacation that they planned, which all of them, this is my first cohort that I've done it. All of them are like, I've never done this before. I just kind of scheduled the trip and then I figure it out later. And so we actually budgeted out, like estimate what you're going to spend on food each day. What experiences are you going to do? Let's budget that out and actually look at it so you know how much money you need. So then we can make this trip happen. We're saving the right amount. And then we divide it, by how much they need per paycheck or month, however we need to do it. But I think planning and sinking funds. So I'm a huge supporter of that.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. Well, that's good, right? And I think, obviously we love those. I don't know if like within the sinking funds, if you're like a big proponent of like high yield savings accounts. I know we love telling people about that. Oh, 100%, right? And so, so just want to throw that gem out there for our listeners. Definitely tap into the sinking funds, but make sure they're beating inflation or at least matching it. So I love that a lot. Very, very cool.
I mean, that's something I was mad about. I didn't know that earlier. High yield savings accounts. So back to our original question. Yeah, if you don't have a high yield, open it up. Like,
absolutely. Oh no, absolutely. Nowadays, absolutely. And so, one thing again, I want to circle back to going to Blossom Financial, and I love again everything I'm hearing from it. I can understand why it's there's a market need and there's an amazing person leading it, which is great, right? And so, can you kind of talk about whatever degree you can talk about, like what are some of those success stories? Because I think here at FLI, we love, getting those unprompted testimonials or people saying, this is how much I've saved, this is how much I paid off, this is how much I've invested. I now understand how credit cards work. I've opened up, my business file, my LLC, all these kinds of things, beautiful success stories, right? What are some awesome success stories that Blossom Financial and you, Taylor, have received?
Yeah, I'm trying to think through like which ones I want to talk about as far as,
Right.
all those things. So I'm a big proponent of, I call them non-scale victories. So like think of when you're in a fitness journey, maybe you're trying to lose weight. Like obviously you want to see the numbers happen. So in this case, you want to see your debt amount go down. You want to see your savings increase. So obviously I track all that. But I think the non-scale victories are more important, where people aren't scared to think about their finances. Maybe they're having conversations with their spouse finally when it comes to their money, or maybe they're excited about their future, whatever that is. And so that's something I really strive for. And I actually track that with my clients. So we create goals that are numbers driven, of course, so that way we can track them and have that success, but then also tracking those non-scale victories, what I call them. But I'm thinking about my very first client. She was like my beta client, if you will. So she was completely free just so I can get my feet wet with coaching. This was back in 2020. And so she had quite a bit of debt, mainly student loans. She was an out-of-state student as well. And she was just burdened by her minimum payments. And so it was one of those games where she was catching up with her credit card. She would pay her credit card off, but then she'd have to use her credit card again. And she was just living off of credit cards. And so I think one of the biggest things that we did with her, I told her to stop using her credit cards until we pay this off, because you can't get ahead. And so we've had huge numbers with her. We only worked together for about 4 months. Her net worth increased by about 9,000 in those 4 months, which might not seem a lot depending on, where you're at. But with her, she barely had any extra money to throw to debt because of her minimum monthly payments. But her non-scale victories are the best that I've had out of all of my clients, because she was excited about her money. She actually had more wiggle room. We actually budgeted for some vacations during our 4 months together. So I'm a big proponent of also balance. I know Dave Ramsey will hate this, but go on your vacations while you're paying off debt. Buy a coffee. You have to have those things, or else, I mean, there's certain situations, I'll say that, you know what I'm saying, but yeah, it's about creating that balance. And so I would say that she's probably one of my biggest success stories. And then I also have another client I'm actually helping right now, so I can't give you the final results quite yet. So it's a newer client, but he's just, again, burdened by payments, but he's just wanting to contribute to the household, and be a better partner. And they're having conversations around money that they've never had before. And so just empowering him to have those conversations with his partner, so that way they can plan for their future wedding and for their future family, and just improve their family tree. And so that's what I'm really excited for, changing their future generations behind them. Yeah.
What I like, what comes to mind when I hear all those beautiful stories, right, is, and I don't know if you've watched the series that we've talked about a few times on the podcast in our community, is Ramit Sethi's How to Get Rich series on Netflix.
Yeah. I just watched it about a month ago. Yeah.
Right. Beautiful series. And again, you talked about the balance, right, dichotomy. And sure, maybe Dave Ramsey doesn't like it. Well, hey, Dave Ramsey, you got your community, right? And we love you, Dave Ramsey. But I love the balance, right? Because Ramit talks about this all the time, is we don't want to sacrifice, or we shouldn't have to sacrifice on the things that make our life worth living, like that coffee in the morning, like our vacations, right? But again, there is some caveat to that. We don't want to, go with the Trento when all maybe we need is the Grande, right? Or we don't need to go to Fiji if we're just enjoying maybe Nebraska for the weekend, or, obviously I'm masturbating it. But I absolutely love that, again, that ideology is, or that, that ideology is because, you can enjoy your debt-free or your financially freeing journey, right? And it can be enjoyable, because if it is not enjoyable, you're naturally just going to fall off. That's just, I've seen it. I've seen it maybe in our clients. I've seen it, with other people. You're naturally going to fall off if you don't enjoy it. And so I absolutely love that you share that, right? And so now with that, right, with, building Blossom Financial as another, business owner, you kind of talk about how has that process been going for you? Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, obviously it's fulfilling, which is great, but even what are some of those tough moments? Maybe what are some of those bottlenecks? Because, from what I hear as well, is that you do that one-on-one coaching, and being all, transparent. We've talked about this. We have clients, that we do this with, is we do one-on-one coaching, right? And something we're thinking about with FLI is that is an amazing and effective process, but it is one that it's hard to scale. Right. It is just, and especially if you're maybe a one-man, one-woman show, or if you're a three-man, three-woman show, right? It's very hard to scale once clients start to ramp up. So something we're thinking about with FLI is how can we continue to provide this amazing value, but bring it to more people, right? And so in any way possible, can you kind of talk about what are the maybe the flip side, or not the complete negatives, but just toughs,
Mhm.
like the roughs and the toughs of being a business owner in this space and having maybe bottlenecks such as this?
Yeah, I would say behind motherhood, entrepreneurship is probably the hardest thing. For sure. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's not the easy route and it's not for everybody, for sure. I mean, to be honest, most people don't have it in them to be an entrepreneur. And so I think a lot of people fall trapped to that. Yeah, I mean, it is pretty hard because I still work part-time at the University of Akron right now. I work 20 hours at the University of Akron. I support K-12 teachers who are teaching financial literacy. So teaching them how to teach financial literacy, teaching the teacher.
Mhm.
And then obviously I'm a mom to two toddlers, and so they're crazy all the time. And then so fitting in my business in the midst of all that, and being a wife and, having a social life and
Oh,
mental
yeah.
health and, fitness. And so I think that's the hardest part about being an entrepreneur, especially at that startup stage, is because you have to do a lot of work, especially at that beginning part. You're laying a lot of foundation work and building processes and creating programs. And, obviously it still is hard down the road, but you can at least build on what you've already established. And so I think that's been the hardest part for me being a new business owner is just the time that it takes. I just wish I had more time
Yeah.
in a week, just because I still want to be a good mom. I want to be a good employee at my desk job. I want to be a good entrepreneur and coach and a good friend. And so that's been the hardest part for me that,
Mhm.
I'm always taking tips and advice on. And that's been helpful to connect with other entrepreneurs and especially people who are ahead of me too, of like, what do you do? Like, um, yeah, so that's been
Yeah.
hard. Still figuring it out.
No, absolutely, absolutely right. And again, I love that you shared that because another kind of sub question I was thinking about is like, what your day to day looks like in the sense that, like you mentioned, all these different hats that you wear on top of an entrepreneur. And that right there is like sub hats, right? There's sub hats
Oh,
within the
for sure.
entrepreneurial hat, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, I even just heard like 30 different things you said. I'm like, how does she do it? Right. And so again, kind of trying to find a parallel between what we've experienced. It's like, I already know we sacrifice our weekends to build out our stuff,
Mhm.
right? But again, we don't wear the innumerable hats that I just heard, right? So like what does your day to day look like, right? And obviously for you, I can just tell and I known you, right? And the stuff that you poured into me, success for you is imminent, but again, it requires sacrifice. So what are your days looking like? Maybe even like is your weekend comparable to what I just said, like it's a sacrificial weekend where hey, like girlfriends, like love brunch, I love you all, but maybe gonna have
Yeah.
to catch you next month, right? Because I'm grinding, right? What does that look like
Mhm.
for you, like day to day, right? And maybe in tandem with that question, what are some of those maybe personal systems and processes, whether it's time management with a calendar, or maybe it's a
Mhm.
reminder, maybe even have an assistant with Blossom Financial. So again, kind of the question was day to day as well as like system and processes that help you throughout the day to day.
Yeah, so my day to day, so it's different every single day, just the nature of toddler life. But I work part time at the University of Akron, and so I work 4 days a week for 5 hours in the morning. So usually like 8 to 1 or so is that, and then commute time and whatnot. Then I come home and I'm with my kids, just either putting them to bed or feeding them. They're like little monsters, always demanding something. So I'm always taking care of them for that. My husband gets home around 3:30, and so usually at that point, that's when most of my clients I'm serving in the evening hours, which isn't always ideal for me. I'm a morning person, so I would love to serve people in the morning, but it's just not working right now in the season that I'm in. But it also works for people who are in my niche, right? They're working, and then after work, then they want to be coached. So meeting my clients where they're at. But my
Mm,
weekends definitely are sacrificed for business, at least Saturday. Just due to my faith, I don't do any work on Sunday. I'm pretty strict on that, just to protect one weekend day.
mm,
So I stick to that just for a variety of reasons. But yeah, I'm going to networking events. I'm going to fairs, trying to promote my business. I'm meeting with clients or doing a program on Saturday. Yeah,
wow,
so
that's awesome.
I mean, you guys know how it is. It's tough to do all that. But yeah, I mentioned I'm a planner, so I live by my planner. I will forget if I don't. Yeah, I'm still a pen and paper girl when it comes to my planner of just writing things down. That's been tough for me as a business owner, just the overlap,
Mhm,
just because it's multiple, hats in one planner or Google Calendar, however you do it.
mhm.
So just trying to juggle everything. but yeah, just guarding my time of what's important to me. And I use an online scheduler for my clients. And so I block out time when there's something else going on. Like I will not choose my business over my family, for example, or to a certain degree. If a friend wants to get dinner one night, I'll block off my calendar so that way I can make it happen. So fortunately, I'm at that stage of my business where I can still have that flexibility, and I want to keep that.
Yeah,
But yeah,
absolutely.
there's a lot of nights where I'm working when the kids are sleeping. Um, yeah, so it's just communication, I think, has been huge for our marriage, just to make sure, he knows that's a dream dream of mine. And it has been for a few years. So it's give and take,
Yeah.
with all that. So yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And again, it's again just at like probably there's 12 or 13 different parallels I saw in that. Like, yep, yeah, yep, yep,
Yeah, you
like
did it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, we no, 100% right. And
Mhm.
again, like we also have the understanding that, and I love the word that you use is serving, right? Because number one, we love doing it, but number two, it's something that's bigger than us, and people they need this information, right? And that's
Mhm.
ultimately why we created, the organizations that we did. So I love that you shared that, and thank you so much for
Yeah.
sharing that. And so continuing on this train, probably one of my last questions for Blossom Financial, but this is great, is the future of Blossom Financial, right? And so you
Mhm.
mentioned a couple of things like, you're going to conferences and seminars and workshops, and which is all awesome, right? I think the networking in the space is a great thing, and that's something we're realizing as well with FLI, going to things like FinCon and going to things like InvestFest, and attending perhaps some of the events that University of Akron's putting on, right? And
Yeah.
what's really awesome is meeting amazing like-minded people in the space, right? And again,
Mhm.
all with the purpose of serving, all with the purpose of getting this information out there that again we wish we were given, but
Mhm.
then doing it in a unique way. And again, just like you, absolutely doing it in a unique way. We are absolutely blessed to know you and have now collaborated with you, which is great. And so
Nice.
on that front or in any other kinds of fronts, right? Again, to the degree and to the level you would like to share, because we respect that, is what do you anticipate or what are you planning for? What are some long-term goals future wise with like you and Blossom Financial?
Yeah. So another financial coach, she's a few years ahead of me, but what she does, which this is the ultimate dream, she calls it her 10-10-10 model. So she serves
Hmm.
10 clients at a time, works 10 days a month,
Hmm.
and 10 months a year. So her 10-10-10 model. So
Okay.
like that's, pretty far off, but I think that would be amazing, 10 months a year, 10 days a month. She's a full-time RVer. And so
Wow.
I just think that's so cool just to have that life balance of still working and scaling your business to a spot where you can only work 10 days a month and still
Hmm.
spend time with your family and your hobbies and traveling the country.
Yeah.
So might be a little far fetched, but that's the ultimate goal, I
Hmm.
think. Um, no, but I think just for the future, I'm not the type of person, I don't know if you've heard just the whole 10K month or six-figure year. Like, I feel like that's just something that people throw out there, which obviously I would love to have that in a given month from my business, but I would love to stay smaller, to be honest, which I know is countercultural in the entrepreneurship world. But I would love just to have 15 to 20 hours a week working my business. So whatever that looks like, but that way I can stay small and support that small cohort of women, like you talked
Hmm.
about, like my niche, keep
Hmm.
our community tight. And so
Yeah.
want to keep
That,
that exclusive and,
that's
still
good.
maintain that life balance, whatever
Yeah.
that looks like down the road. But
No,
yeah, there's
absolutely.
my general answer.
No, that's awesome. And you mentioned and this no, two more sub questions. It's great. As you can tell, like I just love picking apart and understanding
No,
more
I
and
love it.
talking about it. The 10-10 creator. So there's kind of two questions, right? There's the model, which I'll talk about here in a second, but then the creator I'll talk about first, right? So you mentioned the creator, right? How did you meet her? Right? Is she like a mentor or a friend? You kind of like, bounce ideas off each other. Can you kind of tell me a little more about her, maybe that relationship? That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so I'm actually not close with her, but her name is
Awesome.
Jessica. I believe Medina is her last name. But earlier this year, I joined, it was called the Client Creator Challenge. So, financial coaches, this is a great community for you to
Oh,
join. Oh my gosh, I cannot remember their organization name, but Fiscal Phoenix. Oh, I can't remember.
you're good.
But it's a financial coaching company out of Arizona, and they just do great work. They have a whole separate arm of their company where they support financial coaches
Wow.
and train them. And so that's how she was participating in that challenge. where the whole mission was just to try and acquire as many clients as possible during a 15-week period. And so learned a lot, built some good habits for my own personal business that I'm now seeing the fruit of, now that I've been practicing these things. But she shared her goals. I mean, we were all vulnerable with each other of this is what I want to achieve. And, this is my desired outcomes for my business. And we talked about how to reward yourself. And, some of those things when you're in the go, go, go mindset of entrepreneurship, you don't always think about. You're just thinking about the next thing.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's just so important to find people who are ahead of you, even if they're not in your field, in all stages of life, whether it's being a parent or, being a friend, homeowner, like finding people who are ahead of you just so that way they can speak wisdom into you. And
Yeah,
that's
good.
been life-changing just to find those people.
No, absolutely. And even like this is the title of our last episode podcast. Shout out to Arthur Edge. He was our guest. Great episode. The title was, mentorship is invaluable, which is holds so true, right? And finding those who are above you, who are more experienced, you can perhaps drop those gems on you would maybe save you so much time because maybe you are, going a different direction than perhaps their failures. Or again, they're telling you things that they wish they would have done, right? So I love that you share that. And so thank you for sharing, Jessica. Shout out to her. Very cool. And so, kind of going back to that model, again, something I kind of thought about, because that's actually really, really cool. You said 10 clients, 10 days a month, and then 10 months a year, right?
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, which I think is really unique and really cool, right? I think when I hear that, and again, this is kind of going back to the bottleneck I was referring to, what, FLI, we're kind of thinking about is individual coaching, right? It's like, okay, how can we continue to serve more people with the time that we have, because we can't just increase our time as much as we'd love to do that. Can we do perhaps like group coaching? Can we do things that make the coaching more valuable so we can bring in more people, but also in a healthy and equal value exchange way, make it more valuable in a monetary way, right? So we're thinking about all these things, but at the same time being able to again balance that mental health aspect, because I think as an entrepreneur that is a toll it can definitely have on us if we're not taking that into account. And if we're just worried about trying to accept all these clients and make all this money, again, to a degree still serving, but it's going to have a toll on you if just that's what you're thinking about, right? So I love that model. It's very unique. It's very great. And again, it sounds like it's making a primary essence out of, again, her mental health and her focuses and her goals, right? So I love that a lot. Really, really cool.
Yeah, and that's what's cool about entrepreneurship is you can change that, if you find more value or if you're more energized by group coaching, you can add that to your business or you can change your whole business structure to that. And that's what I love about entrepreneurship is just being able to pivot and do what brings you joy and serve the clients that bring you joy too and that energize you back. So it's really
absolutely. No, yeah, and again, like you mentioned, it's exactly what you make it, and you get to have that creativity to it, right? And that's something even as Anthony knows and our ambassadors know, it's like that creativity. I think we're very thankful for with like our Instagram and the TikTok and the podcast, right? It's given us an outlet on something that we probably haven't had before, right? Even studying engineering, like all about numbers and science. Like I enjoy creating content on Canva to post it on Instagram and doing the little dances to get on TikTok, right? So that creativity and that kind of flow and ebb and flow with entrepreneurship is super unique. But again, you have to keep it real. It is on the harder side, which is why not many people, can continue it. But again, I appreciate that conversation. And so one of the last, questions we'll get into, unless Anthony has another amazing question before we get into our, quick rapid fire, easy questions is, as an entrepreneur, as a content creator, as, the many hats that you wear yourself, right? How do you personally stay on top of like learning, again, continuous learning in the financial industry, right? Do you watch certain content creators? Do you consistently like read said books? Do you like listen to podcasts? Like, how do you stay on top of these trends or, these effective ways to continue to teach, your clients?
Yeah, so with that accreditation that I have, the AFC, they do continued professional development quite a bit. It's all through webinars, but they bring different people in, and some of the contents focus more on the psychology behind things and the coaching aspect of things, but a lot of content heavy things as well. And so that keeps me on my toes. But yeah, just making sure I'm an informed citizen, as cheesy as that sounds, but just making sure I'm reading the news, like what's happening out there, especially with student loan stuff, that's all, changing all the time. So making sure I'm just maybe a step ahead of my clients, just so that way, I can be informed and knowledgeable about certain things. And this also might sound kind of cheesy, but Instagram, I learn a lot just from other people. So other financial coaches and other people who are on their own debt-free journey, or, journey to save or pay cash for a truck, or, I can think of multiple people off the top of my head where I'm just learning so much from their approaches toward things and, how they do things. And so just learning from peers, I think is really big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, just trying to stay informed. It's
Yeah.
hard. We're in info overload, I feel like, in our culture. But yeah, just trying to
real.
find the accurate information, I think, is really tough sometimes. But yeah, just finding those trusted sources.
That's good.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Anthony.
What are some of the good habits you develop at the I believe you said the Fiscal Phoenix Financial
Oh,
Phoenix?
yeah, with the Client Creator Challenge that I did.
Yes.
Yeah, just habits. So as far as just they had 3 different things that they really wanted us to focus on. Well, they had different pillars behind the scenes, but we had to track how many networking events that we attended, how many one-on-ones we had with professionals, and then how many social media posts that we had. Yeah, and it really just helped you see where are your weakness areas, what do you need to put more effort in. And obviously we would track like client acquisition and who's a lead and who's a client, who's an ideal client, all that stuff behind the scenes too. But yeah, it just really helped me. It made it more foundational and easy. So then, because it sounds so overwhelming when you're like, oh, go get a client, and you're like, I don't know how to find like I need help. And they made it more more basic. And yeah, I've just found a lot of value just meeting one-on-one with professionals like this. Not from a self-seeking way of like, oh, I want to get clients, but like, tell me about your business. Like, what do you do?
Right.
Like exactly what you're doing now. Like, just so that way I can help you and you can help me. And, not even just from a client approach, but as a professional. Because that's what's tough with entrepreneurship too, is we don't have that community that you might not always have in an office setting. So like building your community, building your own board of directors, I like to call it. So then that way you have that support. So
no, and that's so true, right? Because it's very important to pour in and serve to our clients and to our community and to our people, but it's equally as important to be poured into from other people who are doing the pouring, or again from those mentors, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. So I love that you stated that, because I think for a lot of people, I had like some sort of like epiphany with a lot of the awesome, people we're bringing on the podcast, like yourself, Taylor. It'd be really, really cool. Again, I don't know how we can do this, but you're probably someone's out there who's doing it. But like, have a content creator in the financial space community, right? And so I don't know what platform, and again, I'm not even sure that would even come to fruition, but it's like, the reason that came to my mind is because that would be uber valuable, right? And so, yeah, no, and again, it's in the sense that like, I like to think of the analogy or the example of like, quick side tangent, but it's going to make sense. Like a 4-way stop, or like, in the stoplights, right? And I've literally seen this, where there'd be like a gas station on every corner, right? And they probably all have the same price, like, 376, 376, 376, 377, whatever. But there's a reason why all those gas stations have cars going through them. It's because the gas is abundant. Now, obviously, if you take that to a next level, gas is finite. That's a whole other conversation. But what I'm saying is like the abundant mindset where we can all be in the same area and we're all serving the same people, but it's in abundance. These people are in abundance. And then now when you look at our niche, how many people are, number one, even like will take the initiative to get out there and learn their finances? Very small. And so like there's an overabundance of people who we can serve, right? And so I absolutely love that idea that, we're getting ideas from other content creators like we're doing right now. It's because there's no competition here, right? Number one, our niches are a little bit different, but that's okay. Even if they weren't, right? You are serving in a unique way. We're serving in a unique way, but ultimately we're serving with a higher purpose, is to inform more people about these financial literacy skills. So I love that we talked about that. And so great question, Anthony. I love that a lot. And again, hopefully after this podcast, we'd love to kind of get that information if you're able to share it with us on more of what Fiscal Phoenix, Financial, or again, whatever the name is.
Sorry, I'm drawing a blank on their exact name right now. No, but yeah, I mean, we all have the ultimate goal of getting people help with their finances. And so it ultimately doesn't matter where it's coming from. But so that's why it's really nice that we can refer people to each other and, to other companies and other professionals in other fields too. So I love having that network and appreciate the support. Yeah, I love collaborating.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. No. So thank you so much. And so again, as we wrap up here, 3 last questions, the easiest one you're going to get all night, right? So the first question is, and we love asking these questions, right, is, if you were to recommend one book, right, that our listeners need to read, like this is that book that you really need to read, what would that book be and why?
I'm a big
She's like,
Brene
how
Brown
do I
fan.
just choose
Well,
one?
see, like the mom and me, I'm like, I haven't read in how long? Like, I don't have time to
That's
read.
good.
Um,
Right.
no, I mean, I'm a big Brene Brown fan. Like, really, any of her books. I just love the vulnerability piece. I just think that's crucial for any leader in any capacity, just to have that vulnerability.
That's good.
Yeah, so I would recommend any of her work.
Okay,
I
you
think
said Brene Brown?
Brene Brown.
Brene Brown. Okay.
Brene. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. We'll look her up. Awesome. Thank you so much. That was Brene Brown to our listeners out there. Very, very cool. Okay, cool. Okay. Next question, right? And so as we near literally almost half of the year in a couple, I think less than a week, right? June.
Crazy.
Right. What would you say is that goal that you set for yourself maybe at the beginning of the year that maybe you've executed on already, or maybe you're looking forward to execute on? We like asking the goal question, right? What is that big goal, again, as much as you would like to share, because we understand if there's goals that are private, but anything you'd like to share, what is that one goal that you're looking forward to execute on prior to the end of 2023 that might be related to your business or personal or career or relationship? What is that one goal you're looking forward to execute on?
Yeah, I think one goal is just keeping at it. I know that sounds
Sure,
kind
that's a
of
good one to go.
simplistic. But yeah, I mean, this is my first full year in business. And so just really sticking at it and moving forward, just because it's so easy to give up and so easy to
Yeah.
fall off track. And, that might be setting the bar pretty low, but I just want to really just remain consistent and steady for myself and for my clients. Then that way I can continue to grow, continue to scale, and then have my big celebration at the end of 2023. So this will be my
Absolutely.
first full calendar year in
That's
business.
awesome.
So yeah.
No, absolutely. And again, by no means is the bar set at any, low length. No, I think what I love about yours, because that's so true. And, Anthony and I, we watch like Alex Ramosi, shout out to him, like religiously, is that, you really will not lose if you don't quit. Right. And there's so many nuances to that statement. But the key of what they're saying is obviously consistency is key, but you will outlast those who literally cannot continue because you're just continuing. Right. So as easy as it might, I mean, it's not as easy. It's easier to say than do, but as easy as it sounds, it's like they're setting the bar low. No, I think that's facts, especially in content creation and in the entrepreneurial space, especially financial coaching as well. It's like, it's very easy. And I've even felt it sometimes. It's like, oh man, this might be a slow month, or, oh man, like this is, very mundane to do, create this content all the time. It's very key to continue doing it. And again, reminding yourself of the why, that, you're serving those who need that kind of help. Right. And I absolutely love that you said what you said, because that is not any low bar setting. That is a true statement that I think a lot of us, even outside of entrepreneur, and your goal right there, a lot of people need to stick to, is the consistency aspect. So I love that you shared that. And so, yeah, 100%. And so the last question, right? Beautiful question is, a lot of our community most likely resonated with you. I know I did, but I know you, right? And so where can our listeners find you at, whether, it's your social media, email, anything you would like to share, plug anything you would like, where can our followers find you?
Yeah, Instagram is the best way. So at Blossom Financial Coaching. Also have a Facebook, and then blossomfinancialcoaching.com. So
Awesome.
find me on there. Yeah, excited to
Appreciate
collab
you.
and refer some people my way.
Absolutely. And again, me, we're going to refer you. Very, very cool. And so, yeah, Taylor, no, thank you. And so, Taylor, we appreciate you so much for having you on the pod tonight. It was an absolute pleasure. Looking forward to see the growth again by the end of 2023, and looking forward to exploding in 2024. Right. And as we do this together, stay in contact, hopefully have you on the pod in the near future. We would love to see all the updates that you bring. So, Taylor, I personally thank you, because like I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, the amount of inspiration, motivation, and even knowledge that you poured into me is absolutely invaluable. The term I just mentioned, kind of mentoring, right? So I appreciate that so much. And we're kind of seeing it go full circle, which is a beautiful thing. So I personally thank you from the bottom of my heart. And so, Anthony, if you have any last comments, we'd love to, again, we're like I started off the podcast as well, Anthony, we're very blessed to have you on the team. So thank you for, joining me on your first podcast.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Taylor. I truly, it's funny when you said full circle, I was like, okay, so Taylor taught Yinkas, Tinkas, teaching us, the different ambassadors. Like, that's true. And then soon, hopefully, I'll have the opportunity to teach the next ambassadors, whoever else joins.
Yeah, you never know the seeds you're planting, which is really cool. Yeah. Well, thank you both. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to cheer you both on your journey. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, likewise. Again, everyone, if you made it this far, we thank you. We appreciate you. We do this for you. This was Taylor Sminchak from Blossom Financial Coaching. This is Anthony Johnson and myself, Olenka Famadou. And again, this was On the Fly Podcast, a Financial Literacy Institute podcast. Thank you.
Thanks.